Welcome everyone to this month's View from the Mount broadcast from Meditation Mount in Ojai, California. Today we will be exploring the theme, Seeking a More Perfect Union. So we're gathered in virtual space from various locations around the world, and so the first order of business is to take a few moments to bring ourselves present to ourselves, to each other, and to the focus of today. So let's begin by relaxing the three bodies of our incarnated self, as it's called, the physical, the emotional, and the mental. So take a few deep, gentle breaths and allow any tension that may have accrued inside your physical body to be released. Breathe out tension. Breathe in relaxation. And then with the emotional body, the body of feelings. Breathe in a sense of calmness and breathe out any tensions that may be swirling. Breathe in calmness, breathe out tension, until the waters of the emotional body become still, unruffled, and calm. And then focusing on the mind. As we breathe out, we release any extraneous thoughts that may be flying around. And we breathe in the quality of serenity. So breathing out all thoughts from the past, all thoughts of the future, breathing in serenity so that we may stand in this present moment. And from this point of stillness, let us enter the silence of the heart. And we sense the one life pulsing through our whole being. And we link heart to heart, to heart to heart, and we see lines of lighted love emanating from each heart on this call, touching every heart of all of us who are gathered. And we weave together a matrix of heart-lighted souls. This matrix is our group chalice, our field of communion and community in which we will receive the outpouring of higher wisdom and we will register new insights together today. Thank you. So the theme is seeking a more perfect union, and here's the approach I'd like to take. I'll be presenting some thoughts, posing questions for us to explore. There will be times of self-reflection. There'll be opportunities to open ourselves in meditation inside our receptive group field and call forth real-time input from the wisdom that lives inside our soul. When we're present, the presence that is has access to us. I like to call these sessions inquiring the way together. It's not me telling you what is. I'm going to be presenting some things that I've gathered over the years from reading the Ageless Wisdom teachings, some experiences, and then we're going to inquire the way together and see what it makes sense inside of each one of us, because we have to own the knowing. So let me share a few opening thoughts as we begin this journey. I believe that inside each human heart there burns a deep desire for wholeness and well-being. It may be covered up, but when you peel back all the layers, I believe that that's the deep desire. It's like a compelling call to find greater meaning and belonging in life. And we're told that meaning and belonging are so important in the life of humanity. So with each step on the spiritual path, you and I find ourselves engaged in an intimate and deeply personal process of integration and alignment to bring together the many disparate aspects of our life into one unified field of expression. So it's like bringing all the pieces back together. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle that's been scattered through time and space, trying to find the pieces and bringing them back together. So in the end, we have one fully interlocking puzzle, and many have come back to the one. So when I reflect on this journey of the individual desire for wholeness, I can see how it's been articulated on behalf of the collective by visionaries such as Martin Luther King. And we know that MLK held the dream of a beloved community where people gather together in joyful service and celebration of the common good. So it's our better angels congregating. And the Buddhists speak of bodhisanga. It's a community that supports each other in walking the path of enlightenment. And I think we're learning more and more that this is not an individual journey. We're doing this as a group, although we have to go through the eye of the needle ourselves. But we are in it together alone. So we've got beloved community, we've got bodhisanga. You could even look at the preamble to the US Constitution because it declares a similar sentiment and a sincere intent to work cooperatively if you read the words, in order to form a more perfect union. So the question we'll be exploring is what stands in the way? So what often stands in the way of us achieving this higher union are our fixed and inflexible beliefs, coupled with unconscious habits and entrenched behaviors that are still predominantly self-serving by nature. Doesn't mean we're selfish. It means at the moment I look to meeting my needs first and then I look to meeting other people's needs. So I'm still self-centered, although my heart is being open to respond to the plight of my sisters and brothers. So if we go back to the ageless wisdom teaching, it says that the soul is in constant meditation as it seeks to stimulate us, its incarnated agent on earth. And what it's seeking to do is to invite us to meet and merge and cooperate, soul, personality, to form this more perfect union. So you could look at it in this way, that we are being invited to organize our inner community of self. I also refer this to the universe of self or the ecosystem of self, but I want to call it the community of self. And we're being asked to establish a united state of being. We have the United States of America. We're talking about on an individual basis, how do you and I create a united state of being where we're governed by the light and wisdom of our sovereign nature? So we're beginning to talk about something that I would name as spiritual politics. In other broadcasts, I've described politics as the way we choose to live together and govern ourselves. Simply that, the way we choose to live together and govern ourselves. So as all change and all positive growth begins with us, it is imperative that we gain an understanding that the internal politics of the ecosystem of self, the community of self, the universe of you and me, is in fact our primary area of responsibility and a prerequisite for any true and lasting change in society. We have to start from the inside out. We have to start with the individual, individuals getting together as conscious groups getting together as one conscious humanity. That's down the road, but that's the dream, that's the ideal. So this first step of bringing together all the disparate parts of ourself is this needed first step on the journey. So we are learning to live in harmony with the various aspects of ourself that may temporarily be in conflict with personality and soul. And we're being asked to bring them gracefully and compassionately into a state of coherence and consensus or concordance, whatever you call it. It's where our community of self is at peace with itself. We don't have a rebellion on our hands. We don't have mutiny. We may have inquiry, may have questions raised, but all the parts are seeking to reach the same conclusion. And the conclusion is a more perfect union. That's the ideal I'm holding. So there are many questions that require clear answers from us in our role as ecosystem steward. And that's how I see myself. I'm the steward of my own ecosystem. And then we're the steward of the ecosystem of the planet Earth itself, Gaia. And I need to take responsibility as this system steward in order for each one of us to play our part and achieve forward momentum as humanity in attaining the goal of a higher union. I don't think it will happen without that. So I'd like to show a couple of slides that have to deal with questions. And then we'll ponder on these questions. We'll come up with what is the question that is living inside our heart at the moment. So here are some questions that were swirling around inside of me a few days ago. They may not be the same questions you have, but just to give you an idea, how do I choose to live my life moving forward? You know, am I satisfied with the direction I've set, with the course I've set? Am I actually living in integrity with myself? Which simply means is my inner reality expressed in my outer life? When it isn't, I'm not in integrity. And then the question, who really is in charge of my life? Who makes the calls? And then one that I ponder often, how do I aspire to and achieve a more perfect union within myself and in relation with others? This is what we call right human relations. And then the fourth question I've placed here, to what degree are my better angels in charge, or how powerfully do my inner demons and shadow aspects still color, condition, and direct my life? So this is more of a checkup, you know. Are my lived ideals, my better angels, do they have the upper hand? Or am I still tugged and swayed and pulled under occasionally by the things that are unresolved yet? I call those my inner demons. I'm not calling them evil. I'm calling them immature. They're not yet aligned to the true light of my being. So let's look at the next one. So I'm going to have us ask some questions together. And I wanted to put this out here because when we ask a question, we often expect to get an immediate answer. I would like to quote Rainer Maria Rilke. You probably are familiar with this quote. It says, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them." And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. So the way to get to the end of the book and find out what the answer is on the last page is to not skip to the last page and try and read it, but is to live the questions, is to go through the process of inquiry. So we said today this is inquiring the way together, and we use the question as a form of inquiry. So what I'd like to do is just stop for a moment and have each of us reflect, What is the most compelling question that is alive in me that I really wish to have answered? And then we're going to go through a process of placing this in the field and eliciting a response. So begin by just listening deeply to what is moving inside you. And then this deep longing to know something, to resolve something. Create a question that captures the spirit of this, that you would like to place in front of life and for life to give you the answer. So just take a few deep breaths, go inside and formulate your question. Now place this question in the silent center of your heart, in the clear, still space of your mind, and see it as a seed that will unfold and reveal to you the answer. In order to have the flower in front of us, we must first sow the seed. So this question for you is your opportunity to sow a seed. So hold this question and allow it to come alive in your heart. So it's not just an image of something written on a piece of paper. It actually is a living question inside of you. So like any seed that's planted in the soil, it takes its own particular time, its own cycle of unfolding to reveal itself, its own gestation process. So there may not be immediate answers, or there may be answers that come fairly quickly. What I'd like to do is to offer a couple of thoughts here. One is from the Agni Yoga teaching. It gives us a way of finding answers through questions. It proposes that each night before you go to bed, you place the question on your heart and you allow the question to come alive, just as we've done now. And when the question comes alive, it becomes magnetic. And when it becomes magnetic, it becomes like a little magnet inside us. And it has magnetic appeal. And when magnetic appeal is alive inside of us, it will attract to it all that is needed. This is what we know as the science of invocation and evocation. In the Bible, it's simply referred to as ask and ye shall receive. Knock and the door shall be open. And then just one more thing about a question. This works in the English language. I'm not sure how well it works in other languages, but for me, a question is a quest ion, an ion of quest. So the quest we are on is the deep search for truth and meaning. That's the quest part. The ion is an electrically charged atom that will help us move forward and pierce the heart of the question. So a question really is this dynamic quest, electrically charged quest that we're on. And as Rilke suggested, allow it to live inside you. So as we go through our time together today, let us be aware that we are on a quest together. That we are the living question because we are the people on the quest. And I believe that by answering these questions with clarity, with clear intentionality, we actually initiate a deep exploration and examination of the politics of self. And when we do it, it leads to a powerful act of will. We know that things only change when we choose them to change, when we declare, when we dare, when we say, I will do this. So our declared choices dictate the direction and path we take in life. Everything we choose has a consequence. So how you and I show up in daily life is simply a reflection of our inner state of consciousness, because our deeply held values and beliefs shape and determine our worldly persona. And I'm thinking of Shakespeare, that famous line, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. So I think of the daily drama of life as a play. And I remember several years ago, I was in Sicily in the town of Syracuse, and I was watching some productions of the Greek tragedies in this old amphitheater. I think it was 2,300 years old. And they have it just before the sun goes down, and then they put the floodlights on. And I was sitting there one evening reflecting on how unsavory some of the characters were that appeared on stage. And my critical mind was going, why are they on stage? Who let them on? Because I say, why aren't they disqualified and removed from the cast list? Because their behavior is despicable. If you're familiar with the Greek tragedies, there were sons murdering fathers, seducing their mothers, betraying sisters and brothers in most cruel and calculating ways. And I remember one production, Electra. I witnessed Agamemnon, the king of Argos, actually sacrificed his daughter, Iphigenia, to appease the goddess Artemis, so he could sail off to Troy, and then while away, his wife, Clytemnestra, had an affair with his cousin, Aegisthus, who proceeded to claim the throne in his absence. So it's like this, it's classic soap opera. So it quickly became obvious to me that the real reason these characters existed and were actually permitted to act was in order to portray the darker, unresolved aspects of our human nature that we're still wrestling with and seeking to overcome. We've just moved out from Scorpio into Sagittarius, where we're seeking the arrow of direction, where we choose a goal, we find that goal, and then we choose another. And when we were in Scorpio, we were wrestling with the serpent of desire, the Hydra. And so the Greek tragedies are really a description of the overcoming of the Hydra, because as we've said on other broadcasts, the tests in Scorpio are not just relegated to once a year in the zodiacal cycle. Scorpio rules the path of discipleship. So all of us, for the whole of this lifetime and probably a few more, will be playing variations on the theme of the tests of Scorpio, overcoming the Hydra. So I do look at the Greek tragedy as a long-running soap opera. It's probably the longest running show in town. And it vividly depicts the dynamics of the human psyche. And it really reflects with great clarity the vast psychodrama in which all of our lives are engaged as fellow actors. I often look at life as just one big improv. This is street theatre. We're doing street theatre on planet Earth. So when we look at the world and the current political and social landscape with all of its struggles, I believe that in a similar manner, what we perceive outwardly is a clear reflection and vivid externalization of an inner state of consciousness. Because the outer reality is always a precipitation and manifestation of an inner level of consciousness. That's the gist of the ancient teachings. Energy follows thought. When we set something in motion, when we hold it on the inside, it will eventually show up on the outside. So without blame or judgment, and without entering into the tense polarity of party politics, we can witness the playing out of the psychological drama of evolution in every field of life, and particularly here in the United States of America. At the moment, there are those who are celebrating the outcome of the recent US election as a hopeful step forward so that a new broom can sweep away the old encrusted forms, while another section of society sees the result as a disaster, the sign of moral decline and a dramatic step backward. So the big question is, how do we now move forward from the locked positions of duality to a higher point of convergence? That's what we're in at the moment. So I'd like to put forward this notion. What if there are no winners or losers? All that exists is the grace of tough lessons to be faced and learned over many generations, many lifetimes, in order to mature ourselves and then invite our better angels to actually govern. Now this may take a while, but for me it's what I hold out as the ideal. From duality to a point of synthesis where we bring the gifts of both poles and bring forth their higher aspects to meet at a higher point of service. So I might even dare to say that presidents and governments are not so much elected as they are precipitated from out of the collective psyche. And so they represent a combination of our highest aspirations together with those character impediments still blocking the way to a more united state of being. So we've got both. And in order to resolve something, it has to be revealed, it has to be on stage. You can't act it out if you don't have all the players on stage, if you don't have the plot. You just have people standing around on stage wondering what's happening. We are on stage right now. And we're being asked to resolve the duality and move to a place that is a more perfect union. So I invite you now just to take a few moments and not to get into the political mindset, but to just view, how am I currently holding the state of the world? And if you live in the United States, how am I holding the current situation and the result of the election without blame or judgment? Nothing is good or bad, but just an inquiry to see how I'm holding it. So just take a minute to reflect. And the reason for inviting us to do this is so that we are mindful of our choices, mindful of where we stand, because if energy follows thought, wherever we stand inside in our thoughts, that creates the outer reality. So at Meditation Mount, the government we're seeking to promote and elect to high office is that of the enlightened soul, because the soul has wisdom, compassionate intelligence. It has a fiery alignment to a higher purpose in life. So the seeking a more perfect union would be the union between the soul and the personality. So the question is, given the current state of play, how do we remedy the current situation and move from political impasse to a state of social harmony, mutual respect and understanding? Because if we don't like the present portrayal of the story that's on stage or the way things are playing out, then perhaps we need to write a new common script. We need to describe a new preferred and brighter future. We may need to develop a new plot. We may need to develop the characters on stage so that we are more mature. And as we become more mature, we come to a stage where we are potent expressions of the innate qualities of the human spirit. instead of a rude and raucous outpicturing of our human vices and shadow aspects. So the stage is set. The stage is set for the opening of the next act in this unfolding drama of the human story, and we are each being invited to play our part. So in this day and age, with social media, nothing can be swept under the carpet anymore. Nothing can be hidden. Everything is now in full view on the world stage, so that we may recognize what's happening, acknowledge it, and then accept responsibility for all past actions as a human family. So we are creating a situation that actually is a liberating process of purification and a way to mature, to clear a space for us to stand in the present. Because as the Agni Yoga teaching says, our task is to precipitate the future in the present, free from the conditioning of the past. So what I'd like to do is take a couple of breaths and then to show a few more images. And as I've mentioned in previous broadcasts, these images were created back in 1975, so they're coming up to whatever it is, 50 years old now, for a course that I taught at the Findhorn community in Scotland and on esoteric philosophy. And they're sort of cartoon images, so they get the point across, hopefully. So let's just review those. So this is what I just mentioned. Creativity and responsibility must go hand in hand. This is what it means to learn the lessons of being a god, being a creator, being a sovereign. And on the left, you can see nothing can be swept under the carpet. You cannot disown yourself. So eventually we have to stand up and hold everything in our hand that we've created rather than sweep it under the carpet or throw it out the window and say, I accept full responsibility for all my actions. I cannot blame others for problems in my life. I am the creator. And when we do that, it's a point of liberation. It's also a very challenging and difficult point because we're acknowledging something that before we weren't ready to acknowledge. We're coming face to face with our own shadow, our own dweller. But the dweller isn't some outside entity that's there to block our way. It's an outer projection of our inner unresolved self. So let's have a look at the next image. Because everyone says, well, who's going to fix it? My response is, if you want to know who's responsible and has the power to build a new world, just look in any mirror. It's you and I. There's no getting away from it. There are no spectators. This is a full contact sport in time, space, and substance that the soul is engaging in through its incarnated agent, our personality. This is what I just referred to, the deep desire for creating wholeness in our life. Because there are many parts of myself that I've banished, I've blocked out from my mind, I don't like, and they're there, they're my creation. And the only way to be whole is to bring them home. So at the moment, there's a lot of me outside my home. I've got to have a spiritual homecoming where I invite all the parts of myself that have gotten lost along the way. Because we cannot move to the next step of evolution, go through the next threshold, next portal, until we've reached a state of wholeness. And the state of wholeness, it said, is the integration of the personality and the alignment with the personality to the soul. So this is just a way of saying, I believe this is what we're facing at the moment. There are lots of disparate parts, maybe have a deep longing for wholeness, but at the moment don't have the skill to do that. So many people bemoan the fact that we're in a crisis. So here it says, a crisis is a convergence point in time and space where underlying patterns surface, an opportunity for change and resolution in the here and now. The politics of place is to think globally and act locally. Look, if it wasn't for a crisis, we couldn't deal with it. A crisis brings everything to a point in time and space and substance. When things are just floating in the ethers, you can't grab on them. You really need a crisis, and we do have a crisis at the moment. We've got an environmental crisis, we've got a political, social. These are simply points of crisis where we're being asked to address something. We're not victims of it. We're facing the situation that we ourselves have created. And then we get to this question: what is world service? Is it to patch up the old, put band-aids on the old, or is it to help the new grow? And of course, the classic answer is both. But it's both at its higher aspects. We're here to help with the healing of those who have suffered trauma. And we're here to sow the seeds of something new. Because unless we sow the seeds of the new, nothing new will grow. Otherwise, we'll be just patching up the wounded forever. So we do have these two tasks. The compassionate heart reaches out to those who are in pain, those who are suffering, and seeks to help the healing. And the first place we start is inside ourselves. And then together, we're here to plant the seeds of a new possibility. So for me, it's both, but at a higher dimension. And then finally, when we have reached this higher union, this more perfect union, which is when the soul and the personality are co-resonant, then we become this portal, this opening, what I call points of entry on earth through which genius can flow. These are the groups and individuals who are open to meet the need. Through the quality of their lives, they act as magnetic seed points. It goes back to this magnetism. As we live our lives, we become magnetic. As we are magnetic, we attract that which is attracted to the note we're sounding. And when we start being compassionate with each other and kind and loving, when we start seeking to build a new world together, that's a magnetic force that draws out from all of us the goodness that lives in the heart of who we are. So I just wanted to show those few slides just as a way of bringing some thoughts together. So let's take a breath. So I think we could look upon this, the stewardship of our community of self as an act of leadership. We're being asked to be a leader, a steward of our own ecosystem. So we're always faced with the decision of leadership at both a personal and collective level whenever we consider the fact that politics is, as I said before, how we choose to live together and govern ourselves. So our lives can come into harmony with our interior nature and with that of others. And when we do that, we begin to find that we are organized around shared principles. We're organized around shared values. And when we organize around these principles and values, it leads us on the path to a more perfect union. So let me go back to some of the work we do here at Meditation Mount. In a very simplistic way, you could say that we're focused on three basic principles that we believe form the solid bedrock upon which the preferred future of our dreams and aspirations can be built. And you probably are familiar with them, but I will repeat them. These are the principles of essential divinity, goodwill, and unanimity. So let's start with the principle of unanimity proclaims the unity of life, the oneness of all life. We're part of this seamless web. The principle of goodwill declares that love is the lifeblood of all relationship. Love lives at the heart of the truth of who we are. It lives at the heart of every atom of nature, every atom of creation. And love is the natural urge of the soul to fully engage in life to give of itself, to be of service. And then finally, the principle of essential divinity affirms that a spark of the Creator lives inside the nuclear heart of all creation, lives inside you and I. That's the connection we have with life. We are life. We are the one broken into the many. At the moment, the many is separated out, and we're on this incredible journey of homecoming where all our disparate parts, you and me, and all the other members of our human family, eventually will realize that we're part of one human family. Because if you understand that the essential divinity principle means that we're fractals of the one life, inside of us is contained the original note of the creative word. And this original note gave rise to all manifestation. So in that way, we are conscious co-authors of the continuing story of creation. So we have to step up to the fact that we are co-authors, we are co-creators. So we are being asked to sound our note and follow the dictum of the soul. So if I could make a sort of a very simple statement, a little childlike, the Creator is not a coercive and imposing dictator, but the one who issued the original dictum. And we know this original dictum as the creative word, or Aum, A-U-M. The creative word is the initiating force, and it's the continuous dynamo of manifestation that's going on right now. And it allows the one to consciously know itself through the many expressions of itself as they consciously make their way back home. And I normally reach back into the Bhagavad Gita and pull out one of my favorite quotes that talks about the one and the many. Having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself in the many, yet I remain. Having pervaded the universe with a fragment of myself, I remain. So it's the one, in order to know itself, fracturing itself, going out into many pieces, the pieces becoming self-conscious, self-realized, realizing they're part of something greater, being called to come home. And the homecoming is the sort of the meta point of self-realization. That's my understanding of the ultimate journey we're on. We're part of life realizing itself, first of all by being cut off from itself and then having to find its way back home. So let's go back to the United States for a moment. The Latin motto of the United States is E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And I believe this perfectly represents the spiritual task of this nation, but also it represents the evolutionary assignment that's been given to all people on earth. Going back to the one and the many. The one was broken up into the many has to come back to the one. So E pluribus unum is not just a national goal. It really sums up the assignment for humanity. Oh, I'd like to take a breath and digest that and have you think about, what does it mean to you, out of many, one? How is that reflected in your life? So this new story that we're being called to co-write is based on the values of the heart. It's based on the qualities of caring and sharing, and on a genuine desire to create a more perfect union between heaven and earth, soul personality. And acting out this drama on the great stage of daily life is how we evolve together in a more conscious way. We are on stage. We are part of this psychodrama. We're not spectators watching it from afar. Our task is to act it out and to call forth our better angels. So when we start to approach that goal of inner union, as the divergent parts of our own universe of self cohere and coalesce, then a corresponding outer union in the form of a healthy and wholesome society is finally possible. So it has to be created on the inside before it can precipitate on the outside. If we try to create something on the outside that simply is a sham, because it doesn't correspond to what we hold inside, it will crack, it will break. It's fake. The true representation of a more perfect union must begin inside each one of us. So I'd like to just begin to wrap this up and say a more perfect union is waiting to be revealed in all walks of life. It actually lives as a pregnant promise in the ethers. And you and I are the appointed agents of revelation in time, space, and substance. We are the ones who can deliver on this promise. Now, I know it's very challenging times we live in, but I want to offer this. Let's not lose heart. Let's not see the current state of the world as an irreconcilable situation, but instead, let's view this powerful moment in human history as a golden opportunity for us to respond to the call of the soul together. So first of all, we have to make that inner alignment. Then we join with others in a group alignment. And then the group alignment, we have intergroup alignment. And then finally, our one humanity realizes that we are one. I remember the story about a student asking the teacher, because they were talking about compassion and loving kindness, "Master, how should we treat the other?" And the master turned to the student and said, "There is no other." And I guess that's what we're beginning to realize. There is no other. It's us. So I leave us with those thoughts. And hopefully some new insights have made their way into your awareness as a result of this common intent to seek a more perfect union. So thank you so much for your presence and your participation. And may we grow in strength and wisdom together so that we can show up in the world as a positive force for good. And thank you on behalf of Meditation Mount. Thank you for being awake, alive, and willing to play your part. And so on behalf of us here at the Mount, I bid you good evening. Farewell. Namaste. I salute the divinity in you.